Actually, we're going to take a break from this conversation. If you guys would stand by, Eliana and Ricky, see Ted Cruz there now on your screen, walking down the hall outside his Senate office. He's going to come face to face with those cameras and microphones just seconds from now. Let's listen in, see what he has to say.
Well, it is great to be back in the welcoming embrace of Washington.
Dennis!
So why are you not endorsing Donald Trump?
Listen, I'm very glad to be back in the Senate. I'm very glad to be rolling up my sleeves and tackling the issues that were the heart of our presidential campaign. We went 13 months crisscrossing the country and saw incredible energy, incredible passion all across the country. Ended up earning over 7 million votes nationwide, winning 12 states, winning nearly 600 delegates. But alas, it wasn't enough. We came up short and didn't prevail. That was not the outcome I had hoped for. It was not the outcome that many others had hoped for. But at the end of the day, in our democratic process, the people decide. For me, what is important is that the movement continues. This movement from the people. This battle is about a lot more than one election cycle or one candidate. It is about principles that are eternal. It is about the free market principles that turned America into a beacon of hope and opportunity from people from all across the world. It's about the constitutional liberties that protect the fundamental rights of every American. All across this country, people are hungry for change. They recognize that the path we're on, it isn't working and people are suffering. This election cycle should be a wake-up call to Washington, D.C. The frustration, the volcanic anger with Washington was echoed throughout this election. My priorities, had I been elected president, were to fight for jobs and freedom and security. I think those are the priorities of the American people. Instead, I will continue fighting for those priorities, jobs and freedom and security, from the United States Senate, fighting to reduce the burdens of Washington on small businesses to protect the liberties of every American.
Senator, why are you not? Why did
you endorse Donald Trump eventually, or do you rule that out entirely?
You know, we suspended our campaign 1 week ago today. There are 2.5 months until the Republican convention, 6 months until the general election. There will be plenty of time for voters to make the determination who they're going to support. What I am interested in supporting are free market principles and the constitutional liberties of Americans. And I think what every voter is going to be doing is listening to the candidates, listening to what they support, and assessing them on their merits. That is the role of the voters.
Senator Cruz, you branded yourself as an outsider, and now you're back here. How do you work with the Senate after branding yourself that way?
Listen, from the first day I was elected to the Senate, my priority has been fighting for the 27 million Texans who I represent. I'm going to continue fighting for the American people. And if fighting for the American people makes you an outsider in the Senate, then I will happily remain an outsider because, at least to date, Congress, both parties, both houses, far too often hasn't been listening to the American people. That is the frustration. This town, too many elected officials listen to big money and special interests and lobbyists. The rich get richer. Under Barack Obama today, the top 1% earn a higher share of our income than any year since 1928. Big government does great for the rich. But those who are struggling, the working men and women, their lives have gotten harder. The people who I am fighting for are single moms and young people and Hispanics and African Americans. It's the truck drivers and the welders and the coal miners. It's the farmers and ranchers. It's the people who've been left behind. And so what I have done every day in the Senate and every day on the campaign trail as a candidate for president has been to fight for the working men and women of this country, to fight so we can bring back to America millions and millions of new high-paying jobs, raise wages, so that working men and women can make ends meet.
Senator, a question about your work in the Senate, please.
We're looking for your guidance. Is there anything Donald Trump can say or do to earn your support? And would you be okay with your supporters choosing to vote for him in the fall?
You know, I trust the people. The great thing about our democratic republic is that authority, sovereignty, rests in we the people. We just had a long, drawn-out battle, a long, drawn-out primary. And going forward from now until November, now until the convention, and then now until November, it will be incumbent on the candidates in this race to make the case to the people that they will fight for them. And I've got a great deal of faith. I've got a great deal of faith in the American people that at the end of the day, they're going to assess these candidates and come to the right.
Senator, for your work in the Senate.
Is that still on the table?
I'm sorry?
Are you ruling out the possibility of a third-party run?
I have no interest in a third
Do
party.
you still think that Donald Trump, Senator, do you think
the Senate after running for president unsuccessfully used words like they were humbled? Several Democrats today said we haven't heard any humility from Ted Cruz. Do you feel humbled?
Well, I would say it is hardly news to have Senate Democrats attacking him. And I suspect that's not going to go away anytime soon. Listen, I am certainly disappointed with the outcome. That I disappointed so many millions of grassroots activists across this country.
Were you joking?
I mean,
when you said you were gonna get back in the race?
this has been an amazing journey. I have to tell you, I am so privileged and so humbled to have had the opportunity to do this, to have had the opportunity to run for president, to travel to virtually every state in the union,
Were you joking?
to visit with thousands and tens of thousands of men and women across this country, to shake their hands, to hug their necks. Every day on the campaign trail, some of you spent a lot of days on the campaign trail. Every day on the campaign trail, I was inspired. I was inspired by the Americans who are forgotten by Washington, forgotten by much of the news media, but the Americans who are struggling and believe in this nation. And if you want to know my greatest disappointment is that I wasn't able to win for them. That I came up short and disappointed their efforts, their time, their passion. That was incredible to see. It's incredible to be a part of, but importantly, that movement, that energy, that passion is going to continue. The conservative movement, I believe, will only continue to get stronger. I recognize a lot of folks in the media, a lot of folks in the Washington are eager to write the epitaph for the conservative movement. And I will say, I believe that the American people are fed up with the disasters of the Obama-Clinton economy. And this movement will continue. And I look forward to pressing in the United States Senate for the very same things that I was pressing for on the campaign trail. Jobs and freedom and security. Lifting the burdens of Washington on small businesses and those who are struggling.
Will you change your tactics at all, Senator? Tactically, do you think that it was a mistake in retrospect to have called Donald Trump terrific early in the campaign, or was there anything else you could have done to prevent this him getting looked down?
You know, I'm not interested in Monday morning quarterbacking. What I can tell you is it was a long and vigorous campaign. We put our all into it. We left it all on the field. Heidi and I and the girls, we campaigned as hard as we physically could. And the support and energy and passion we saw from the people, I've never seen anything like this. And it gives me great faith in this country. It is why I am fighting. It is why I'm working. It's what I intend to continue working.
Will you change your legislation?
Campaign over for this year,
Can you please explain what we're talking about today with Glenn Beck in regards to us re-entering the race? If circumstances change, is there a second act?
Is it over for good?
Is your campaign over?
Listen, we have suspended the campaign. We've suspended the campaign because I can see no viable path to victory. Of course, if that changed, we would reconsider things. But let's be clear, we're not going to win Nebraska today. There should be no mystery, no excitement in that. We've withdrawn from the campaign, and it's in the hands of the voters. If circumstances change, we will always assess change circumstances. But I appreciate the eagerness and excitement of all the folks in the media to see me back in the ring. But you may have to wait a little bit longer.
Cruz, will you be at the convention, sir?
Have you talked to Mr. Trump?
Sir, will you meet with
Senator, have you talked to Mr. Trump?
Okay.
All right, that was Senator Ted Cruz, his first remarks on Capitol Hill on his first day back at the Senate since suspending his presidential campaign last week. Cruz stressing there at the end, asked by that reporter, I don't know if you could hear the reporter, asked about any circumstances in which he would unsuspend his campaign and get back in the race. Ted Cruz saying that, teasing a little bit there, just a little bit, saying that if circumstances change, we will always assess changed circumstances, stressing that he does not believe he's going to win the Nebraska primary today. Of course, his name's still on the ballot in Nebraska today. Before he dropped out of the race, he was considered the favorite in that state. So there is some anticipation tonight looking ahead. How will Trump do in Nebraska with Cruz's name still on the ballot? How many Republicans there will still not vote for Donald Trump? How many votes will Ted Cruz still get? But the headline there, the headline from that session with reporters is that Ted Cruz was in no mood to talk about Donald Trump. There was no affirmative mention there on Cruz's part of Donald Trump. There was no talk of uniting the Republican Party. There was no talk of endorsing Trump. There was no talk of defeating Hillary Clinton. He was asked at one point there if he'd be okay with his supporters turning around now and supporting Donald Trump. All he would say is that I trust the people, that he has tremendous trust in the American people. He also was asked about supporting Donald Trump himself. He stressed that there are still 2.5 months to go until the Republican convention. There are still 6 months to go until the general election, and said that the candidates, in the plural there, the candidates are going to have to make their case to the people. So reading between the lines, Ted Cruz basically delivering a message there to Donald Trump that Donald Trump has got some work there to do to get his support. Also, one other key point there, Trump was asked about Cruz was asked about a potential third-party bid. There's been a lot of talk about conservatives, disgruntled conservatives recruiting a third-party candidate. Ted Cruz said he had no interest in that. Kelly O'Donnell, I know, is standing by. She just watched this whole scene. She was there. Kelly, your impressions?
Well, Steve, I was squeezed in right in front of Senator Cruz, and I think in many ways you hit the high points. This was a bit more emotional Ted Cruz than we typically see. He had a couple of messages, certainly speaking to his supporters and expressing his disappointment. I was most struck that he seemed unexpecting of the question about humility, and he did acknowledge that given this experience and losing, that he does feel humbled. At the same time, he is giving no additional ground to Donald Trump. I was one of the voices asking about any possibility for him to get back in. You might have heard me shouting, is there a second act? And he was very clear and very sort of putting his operational hat on, that Nebraska is not within reach, that circumstances do not appear in any way to be lining up for a surprise that would bring him back into the race, but not closing the door as much as we once heard Marco Rubio do when he said in his exit that it is not God's plan that he would be president in 2016 and being elected president in 2016. He was more declarative. Cruz left a little bit of a door open. He also didn't want to entertain any real discussion of Donald Trump or to sort of go back with the sort of analysis of what he's just been through, strategic moves. Was it wrong to say one thing at one time or do something differently? I was also struck by the humor of, as he walked toward us, saying to be welcomed back in the warm embrace of Washington. I can tell you that Ted Cruz has not made a lot of friends among his colleagues over time, for a number of reasons, where he would in many instances sort of work against them and trying to bring about primary challengers to some of the incumbents in Congress and in the Senate. And at the same time, that will be a challenge for him now. If he wants a national future in the party, can he do anything differently to try to get some things done on Capitol Hill in a role he will have for years to come, because he is early in his first term. He'll be in office till January 2019 on this term. Can he change anything? So I think this was very much the Ted Cruz we saw on the campaign trail, bringing that sort of style, his wording, his attitude back here to the Capitol. Quieter, of course, expressing disappointment. That's a human emotion anyone can expect. And at the same time, not giving the presumptive nominee of his party any indication that is the man who came in second in terms of delegates and stayed in the race a very long time. No ground given to Donald Trump. I asked him if there was anything Trump could do or say to attract his support or to attract Ted Cruz's supporters to vote for him in the fall. And again, he said he wants to buy some time for the candidates. Presumably that means Trump, Clinton, and Sanders to somehow prove themselves to voters. It would seem that people who voted for Ted Cruz, believed in Ted Cruz, would line up for a Republican candidate in the fall, or will they stay home? That'll be an important question in the weeks and months to come. Steve?
All right, Kelly O'Donnell at Capitol Hill, where that Ted Cruz press conference just played out.